Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Happy Friday, everybody. Today is December the 3rd. Holy cow, we're in December. Hope you had a fantastic last week. Today, we are just chilling out, and I'm going to paint some puzzle pieces. Today is week number 2 of our painting puzzle mystery quilt. I hope you're having so much fun. Can I just tell you something? Hello, everybody. It's so great to see you. Miss Hazel, oh, you had a tooth pulled. I am so sorry. I know exactly what that feels like. I hope you're just taking it easy today. Tomorrow you'll feel better. Hello, everybody. Y'all, I have some tips for you today. If you're struggling with the black lines, hold on a minute. I'm going to share some tips with you. It's so great to see you. Today's video is live. If you're here during the live chat, I would love it if you chatted with everybody. That's the main reason why we do the lives every week, right? And if you're watching on the replay, hello. Make sure to say hello down in the comments section. Yeah, I'm going to share some tips with you. And can I just tell you something? Maybe I'm not alone on this. I have a hard time keeping a secret, y'all. And I know that about myself, like with birthdays coming up, with Christmas coming up, if I purchase a gift, if I make a gift any length of time before the occasion, I have such a hard time keeping a secret. Like, I just want to give it to you. I just want to show you what you're getting, right? So I'm doing the puzzle pieces along with you in the live videos, right? But y'all, I've already made this quilt. I've already quilted it. All that's left to do is to put a binding on it. And can I just tell you, I'm struggling to keep it a secret. It is gorgeous. So if you did week 1's puzzle pieces and you're discouraged because you're like, oh, I don't know if I like this, I encourage you to keep going, because when all the puzzle pieces come together, it doesn't really so much matter if your lines are exactly perfect. And I think you're going to love it. It is hard to keep this secret. It is so pretty. It is so pretty. Just before we get started, I don't know if you saw a video that I put out the other day. When we first started talking about this quilt, y'all, some of you asked if we could use fabric instead of paint. So I did a little video where I showed how I would do these puzzle pieces in fabric if I were going in that direction instead of paint. There's a playlist in the description box. Click on that playlist. You'll find the video if you haven't already seen it. So maybe you'd rather work with fabric versus paint. And let me just tell you, there's probably a million different ways to do that process. If you wanted to work with fabric instead, I just shared how I would approach doing these puzzle pieces with fabric. And you can watch that video and see if any of those methods might work for you if you don't want to use the paint. Hello, everybody. Oh, it's so great to see y'all. So yeah, I'm having a really hard time keeping that a secret. I even moved it off of my table so you would not see it anywhere. I had to remember to do that because I'm trying to keep the secret, right? But I'm struggling with it. It's so hard not to share it. I used a decorative stitch to do a little bit of the quilting, and let me just tell you, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Practically Creative said, I watched that video and kept thinking about heat and bond light instead of the freezer paper. Let me just tell you, you could do that, but you want to mirror image your pieces, right? So you could either print off your pieces, mirror imaged if your print settings allow you to do that, or when you trace your pieces, trace from the back side, which is a lot easier if you're tracing using a window or a light box. If you want to use a fusible instead of the freezer paper, make sure to trace a mirror imaged version of your pieces, right? That way all of your pieces are right. Hello, everybody. Hello. Miss Jennifer has a question. Can anyone tell me what is the normal actual size for a flat hot pad? Trying to make some for Christmas. Miss Jennifer, I don't know if there's a normal real size you're supposed to use. But what I would do is search on YouTube hot pads and then go to Pinterest, because Pinterest is a wonderful search engine for all kinds of projects. And then just do some searching there and get an overall, like I would just search a bunch of patterns and then average out what the normal size is, because I think everybody makes them slightly different from each other. Hello, everybody. All right, I'm going to switch you down to the cutting mat. Sorry, I have my tea here. Oh, I wanted to tell you, if you want to hang out tonight, we're going to do a Zoom over on Creative Crew. Bring your pieces if you want to hang out and paint today. I am quite the enabler. That's my personality. All right, here we are with the cutting mat, y'all. I wanted to share some things that I learned along the way. These are the pieces we did last week. These are week number 1's pieces. They still have the freezer paper on them. But once your pieces are completely dry, before you heat set them, look, I'm going to show you the freezer paper on the back. I like to remove this before I heat set them, and it just peels right off the back. See that? So here's our piece, and this is ready to be heat set, right? So at this point, once they're dry, before you square them up, before you heat set them, go ahead and remove your freezer paper. And hello, Miss Sylvia. Thank you so much for moderating. One of the other things I wanted to share with you, some of the things I learned while I was putting together my quilt, the first one that I did, okay? Last week, I traced everything with a ballpoint pen, a black ballpoint pen. What I noticed, because I did the same exact thing with my first quilt, what I noticed is that when I sewed all my pieces together, some of this inner line here showed up in my quilt top. So I've changed how I'm tracing my pieces. And I thought, if I tell you now, you've only done 5 pieces if you've not used a heat erasing pen, if you used a ballpoint pen, right? So now's a good time to change the method you're tracing with if you're doing it with a ballpoint pen. Because when I pieced all 25 pieces together in that first quilt, some of this line showed up here and there on my quilt top. I think it depended on my seam allowance. If I didn't sew exactly straight, sometimes this inner line would show up on top. So I've changed the way I'm tracing my pieces, okay? I'm using a heat erasing pen. I'm using the friction pen. It erases with heat. You could use all the other types of heat erasing pens, right? So I've started tracing my pieces with a heat erasing pen, except for this very outside line, because this is how we're going to square up everything once we're done, right? And we square up the piece after we heat set it. So I would bring this over to your iron, heat set everything, and then square it up. But when you're heat setting, you don't want this outer line or your number to go away, right? So everything on the inside, I've used the friction pen, which will disappear. But this very outside line and the numbers, I've still continued to use my black ballpoint pen. Practically Creative said I used a pencil for the first 5, but it smeared into my paint. Yeah, I think I did mention that the pencil is like the graphite and it does smear. So you might want to change over to something that's not going to smear. Even some of your ballpoint pens might smear too. So I would try on some scrap fabrics, different pens or pencils to use, and then test them with your paints to see if they will smear or not. Miss Vicky, thank you so much for moderating today. Do you use the darker spots on the back of the fabric when the paint isn't dry yet. I'm not quite exactly sure what your question was. I'm sorry. Linda said, I'm having a real hard time keeping the freezer paper on my fabric. Let me just tell you, Reynolds freezer paper works really great, but quite some time ago, about 6 months ago, I switched brands of freezer paper that I'm using. There's a link in the description box to the one I'm using. It's called Meat Hugger, and this does not, my fabric doesn't lift off, it doesn't come off, and it stays on there really well, but it removes very easily when I try to remove it, right? So I have switched from Reynolds freezer paper over to Meat Hugger, and I love it. It comes on a great big roll, just like the freezer paper, you know, the Reynolds, if you buy it in the big roll, and it's a little bit thicker as well. All right, so I've switched the way that I'm tracing my lines, right? Ballpoint pen for this outside line and my numbers. Everything else, I'm using a heat erasing pen, okay? I also wanted to share this with you before we get started painting today. Do you see how I've extended the paint out beyond that inner box? That's because when I did my first 25 pieces, I did not do that. And when I put my quilt together, if my seam allowances were off any, then I had white fabric showing up near those seam allowances. And I had to go back and touch up a lot of little places of white fabric that showed near those seams. Not a big deal, but for these, I am extending my paint beyond this inner box so that I have less touch-ups to do at the end. The good news is that once the quilt top was together, all 25 pieces, you can go back and do touch-ups. And so that's awesome. Anything you touch up at that point, you still do need to heat set it again, right? But let me just tell you, using this, I'm going to tell you, I've really fallen in love with the DecoArt fabric medium. When it's dry, it feels a little rough, right? But as soon as you heat set it, it feels smooth. I don't know if you've heat set your pieces from week number 1 yet, if you're using the DecoArt fabric medium. Do you see the difference? I love it. I was able to quilt right through it, and it worked great. So, but yeah, if you touch up your pieces after your quilt top is together, you'll need to heat set those little touch-ups again, right? All right, if you're not happy with your black lines at this point, you can go in and touch them up, right? For my straight lines, let me find a piece that still has the freezer paper on it since I've started tearing some of them off. Once you've painted your pieces, you've kind of sealed in that fabric, right? So coming back in with a fabric marker, I have found does not bleed nearly half as bad as if you're tracing with a fabric marker directly on the unpainted fabric. So if you're not happy with your lines, let me just share a little tip with you. I like to find like a postcard or an index card, something that's really, really thin but has a nice straight edge. And once your piece is dry before you heat set it, let's find an unstraight line that shows up pretty well. All right, I'm going to touch up this line right there, okay? Let me turn it over because I have an easier time doing it like this. See those uneven edges like that? Which I'm not zoomed in, so you might have a hard time, but seeing that blue, at this point, you can come right in and touch up those blue or those crooked lines and give yourself a nice straight line. See that? Nice and straight. And so if you're struggling with those black lines, this is what I would do. Right now I'm just using a Marvy black fabric marker. See how nice and straight that is? Gorgeous. I would do it at this point because it's a lot easier to work with the smaller pieces versus your quilt being put together, but you could do it either way. See how nice and straight that is? Plus, you can come in on your curved lines. Like I have a lot better control with a marker than I do with a paintbrush. So any places that are missing black paint, you can just come in like that. And you can touch up your lines with a marker. So you could fill in the majority of your lines with paint if you're using paint for that section, but then come back in with a marker right on that edge. Give yourself a nice, crisp, clean line. All right, see that? So if you're struggling with your black lines, don't let it stop you from doing this quilt. Once it's painted, it really seals in that fabric and the marker doesn't bleed, right? See that? So you can go back and touch up all of your pieces. It's so great to see y'all. All right, so these are pieces from last week. I'm just going to set those aside, right? We have pieces for week number 2. I've already painted in my black lines to save some time in today's video. In the first quilt and in last week's video, I painted in all the pieces and then came back in and did the black lines, right? So I don't think there's a true order in which you have to do this process, but I thought I'd save some time in today's video and just go ahead and paint in my black lines. See how I've extended them into that seam allowance? I'm going to have a lot less touch-ups to do with this second quilt than I did with the first one. So I have all of my pieces here, and we're just going to hang out for a little while today. And I'm going to start painting my pieces and just chit chat with you. And if you have questions, maybe we can go over those. But yeah, I'll probably finish them up in the Zoom this evening. And let me shake this up for a minute. Guess what? I've already designed another quilt, paint by numbers. I just printed off all of the stuff for it right before we started today's live. I'm having so much fun with this that I did another one. I haven't painted it yet. I haven't done any of that. I just designed it. And yeah, we can talk a little bit about that. Let's see. I'm going to be working with my A color first. And we'll find piece number 6 while I'm chit-chatting. There we go. The one I'm doing next has a seahorse. It's like a nautical theme and a seashell. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. I'm going to mix some of this fabric medium in. The cool thing about the next one are the pieces. There's 6 pieces, but they're bigger. Right? They're much bigger. It's still going to end up 20 by 20 because I would like to, here's what I would like to do is have a whole bunch of these. And they'll all be, at least the ones I'm doing, they'll all be individually binded like a quilt, right? But when you set them next to each other, it'll look like a bigger quilt. And the binding will just look like little borders around each one, right? And I thought it would be a cool way to fill in some weird spaces on my wall. I don't know if y'all have seen pictures of walls that have little mini quilts all over them. They're so pretty. So that's my intention anyway. Yes, it's a nautical theme. It's got a seahorse and a little bit of seagrass and a seashell, little sandy pebbles at the bottom. It's so cute. I'll show you a picture if y'all want to stick around towards the end. So piece number 6 has 2 A pieces. Last week, y'all, we hung out during the Zoom on Creative Crew for a good little while. And there were quite a few of us there. There was like 23, 25 people there. And we just hung out and painted. Actually, some people who joined in are not doing this particular quilt, but they joined us anyway. So if you are not currently working on this quilt, but want to hang out with us anyway, we would love to have you join in. The more the merrier. Also, too, if you're struggling with your black lines, it might be, well, no. I'm going to take it back because I just painted on my black line. I'll have to touch that up at the end. I was going to say it might be easier to do your black lines first, but I just painted right over top of that black line. I don't think you can see it in the video, but I see it in person. It might not have been the best idea to do the black first. I might have to touch up a lot of these lines. I think, too, my hands are a little bit more shaky today. So when they're like that, I struggle a little bit using a paintbrush. But y'all, nothing is permanent. I find that when I come back later, when my hands are not quite as shaky, I can do touch-ups and it's not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. But yes, I'm most definitely extending this paint well into that seam allowance. And that's going to give me a lot less touch-ups needed at the end. I spent a good little time, a good little chunk of an afternoon touching up all of the colors in those seam allowances. What time tonight? Let me check. 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Oh, Debbie said I just traced all 10 blocks yesterday with a pencil. Guess I will start over. I'm so sorry. Rhonda said, Lisa, did you find it easier to do the black lines first? I thought it was going to be easier when I did the black lines, Rhonda, to be really honest, yesterday. But I'm finding today that I'm painting over top of them and I'm going to have to touch them up. So I won't do that again. But we're all different, so you might try it and find it easier. Let's see if this was 6. A and A. I have to keep double checking because I move my pieces around as I'm painting. And I don't want to accidentally put the wrong color in the wrong place. Yes, I've seen lots of your pictures over on the Creative Crew of your puzzle pieces. So if you haven't shared yet and you want to do that, we all would love to see them. Terry said, My husband saw me painting and said, "Look at you, my painting wife. What's next?" I'm going to tell you, when you get this quilt together, you're going to be like, "Holy cow, I'm a Bob Ross." You're like, "I didn't know I could paint this good." It's so pretty, y'all. And here's the thing, I'm just going to tell you. By week 5, you're going to be like, "I'm so tired of seeing the same colors over and over again." And a lot of these puzzle pieces look the same, right? A lot of them look the same, and you're going to like, "What in the world is this going to look like when I'm done?" It's going to look so pretty. Keep going. Keep on going. My little nautical one has a lot more colors. I think I got carried away with assigning the colors on that one. But I mean, here's the thing, y'all, and I hope you keep this in mind with this quilt too. You don't have to use the colors I'm using. You could assign your own colors. You could certainly do that. All right, so there's those 2 pieces. Let's see, piece number 7 has some A in it. You don't have to use the same colors. And certainly the little nautical one that I'm doing, you don't have to use as many colors. I just got carried away. But I'm kind of excited to start that one. That one, actually, the puzzle pieces, I did not number, so you can print them right on your fabric. So you don't have to trace any black lines if you don't want to. You can print the pieces right on your fabric. I've already tested it and everything. I kind of wish I would have thought about not putting the numbers on these pieces so you could print these as well, but I did not think about it when I designed this one, and it would be a lot of work to go back in and change it at this point. But the next one, if you don't want to trace it, you don't have to. Yeah, practically creative. Yes, a lot of these pieces you're going to find look exactly the same. This one, this design, I guess you could call it like a geometric. It's all very geometric looking. I guess that's the right word for it. Sometimes I use the wrong words, y'all. But yeah, a lot of the pieces look exactly the same. Let's see, 7, so this section here. Hazel, I would love it if you were able to make it this evening. I'm not quite sure what time it would be for you where you are. It might be in the middle of the night. I don't know. Linda said, "I'm determined to do this." You can do this, Miss Linda. Let me just tell you, I touched up so much of my first quilt, and here's the thing, even touching it up, perfected it like 100%. I'm going to tell you. So if you're not happy with your individual pieces, you can always go back and touch up your pieces. If you're determined to do this and you really want to do it, but you're struggling, keep on going. I do think, for me anyways, I won't be painting my black lines first anymore. I can already tell I will need to touch up all of these lines, which I don't mind doing touch-ups, but I don't want to create more work for myself. Do you know what I mean? Hazel, you've never done a Zoom before. You might want to download the app before you join in. It's a lot easier to join a Zoom if you've already downloaded the app. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. So you might want to just download that first because you'll have an easier time joining in. But once you download it, then you just click the link and join in. I'll post a link on Creative Crew right before 8:30. That's where you'll go to join in. All right, A, and that's all my A pieces for this piece, number 7. Ooh. Let's see, piece number 8. Anitra said, my second week printed a different size since I used my computer rather than my phone to print. I like the larger size better, so it looks like I'll be redoing the first set. That's interesting, Anitra. I've never printed from my phone before. I wonder why it did that. I guess, yeah, if you print from your phone one week, you should print them all from your phone. Or if you're printing from your computer, print them all from your computer. I guess mixing them up does change the size some. Jackie's going to use fabric in her quilt. Ooh, I hope you share pictures of it. I'm going to be moving on to the nautical quilt, or else I probably would do this quilt in fabric myself after this. I probably would. So if you do it with fabric, I would love to see it. Ooh, Gloria's hopefully going to start painting during our holiday break. Yeah, Debbie makes a really good point. Ooh, Debbie, do you see your box back there on the floor? I'm quilting your quilt on Monday. When you zoom on the computer, you do see a lot more people in the screen versus on the phone, or maybe even on an iPad. I don't know. So if you have the capability to zoom on your computer, you will see more people at one time. But I've zoomed when we're away and traveling from my phone, and that was fun too. I just had to swipe to see who was talking. I can already tell you, I don't think I mixed enough of this A color. The good news is one of these containers of paint will be more than enough to do all your pieces for one quilt. I'm on quilt number 2, and I'm still using the same little bottles of paint. And I still have a little bit of this fabric medium. I don't think this 2-ounce bottle is enough to do 2 of these quilts because it is right at the very bottom. But 1 was enough to do the first quilt, so that's good. See how I'm just pulling that paint right into that seam allowance? That's going to save me a lot of touch-ups in the end. What are the numbers on the color key? Those numbers, okay, so if by chance you're printing off that color key and you only have a black and white printer, right? The numbers on that color key can be a little bit confusing because some of them say gray, but we're using like teals, right? Or aquas, whatever you want to call it. If you have a set of Prismacolor pencils and you make your own color swatch, supposedly the computer is telling me those are the Prismacolors. So if you made your own little color swatch using those numbers of Prismacolor colored pencils, these are the colors you would get. Now, I'm not real sure about that, to be honest, 100%. And I don't have the Prismacolor pencils, or else I would have double checked. But I used an app on the computer to pick the color palette. There's a really cool app, and I forget what it's called, but you can draw out color palettes from a photograph, which is really awesome. I ran out of color A, so I'm going to stop right there with color A. I'll finish color A tonight. But also on the app, you can search trending color palettes. And so the colors I am using for this quilt was one of the trending color palettes. So we're trending, y'all. And so I saved the color palette. And in the color palette, those are the numbers that it assigned all the colors. So I have to believe that those numbers are accurate, but they might not be. All right, I just cleaned out my brush. I'll finish color A this evening. Let's go with color B. I like to make sure my brush is really, really dry after I clean it out, because if there's water collected in the bristles of your brush and you start painting, you're going to see that color just spread, right? I like to make sure my brush is really, really dry. And I'm still using the same exact brush that I've used for the first quilt, and going into this second, I've used this brush for not only the pieces with all the colors, but for the black lines too. All right, here's color B. If you have that little dried chunky part on your bottles, you might want to just pull that off, because you don't want that going onto your fabric, right? There's a little chunky part. I'll mix up just a little bit of that. So, looking at the photos that y'all have posted over on Creative Crew, and some of you have sent me pictures and even videos over on Etsy, for those of you who don't do Facebook. So far, I have seen people use fabric markers. That works really well. I've seen people use their Inktense pencils. That works really well. I've seen people use Gelatos. That was awesome. Predominantly, I've seen people using the acrylic paint and mixing in the fabric medium. But y'all, I've seen a variety of different mediums to get your colors. They all look fantastic. So if you're like, oh, I'm not so much big on paint, but I like my Inktense, use your Inktense. Rhonda said, what kind of brushes do you use? I use cheap ones, Miss Rhonda. This one, I can't tell you where it came from. It might have come from, you know, when you go to Michael's or Joann Fabrics and you buy the variety pack of crafting brushes. It might have been in that. It also, I have been known to buy brushes at the Dollar Tree, which is no longer $1, but It might have come from there. And also, one time I went to a yard sale and this person was selling a whole bunch of craft stuff, and there was a great big gallon-sized Ziploc bag full of brushes. It might have been in there, so I can't tell you exactly where it came from, but it's not a name brand. It's just, just a simple, it does say 1/4 inch on it. Simply brushes. That's what it says. But I can tell you it's not like an expensive brush. I am really hard on my brushes. I've been known to let the paint dry on them. And so the only time I really invest in really quality, nice brushes are my brushes that I oil paint with. Those are the only brushes I really spend any money on. And I haven't even done that in many, many years. All right, so that's the B color, and we're piece 8. So those 2 pieces right there are this color. Again, I'm going well into that seam allowance, which kind of looks messy at this point, right? My first piece, I wanted all my pieces to look so perfect when I painted them. But here's the thing, it made so much work because I had so much areas to touch up. So now all of my pieces are going to look a little raggedy at this point. But guess what? I'm going to have a lot less to touch up when I put this second quilt together. So that was a lesson learned. How many of each block do we need? Miss Linda, each week there's 5 new pieces. So this week in the description box are 5 new pieces. There will be a total of 25 pieces that we're going to sew together at the end. And this quilt will measure 20 inches by 20 inches, which actually is a nice size quilt, y'all. I can't show you. It's a very nice size little art quilt. And it was very maneuverable in my domestic sewing machine. So if you want to use some of your decorative stitches in your machine that you never use to do some fancy quilting on this, you can do that. This quilt is not overly big. It's a nice size, but it's not too big to be hard to handle. Do you know what I'm saying? All right, so that's all the B in that one. Piece number 9 has some B. Right there, we'll paint that in. I figured at this point, we've already gone through like what paints I'm using, the fabric medium I'm using. We've gone through the technique of how to trace. So we've gotten all of that out in video number 1, right? If you are just now joining in and you're like, I don't know anything about what you're doing, there's a link to the playlist and you can go back and watch video number 1 because it does go over a lot of the details about what we're doing, right? And then, yeah, you can follow along. The pieces, like I don't know if you noticed, but yesterday I put the thumbnail up for today's video. So on Thursdays, if you want to grab those pieces and pre-trace them and paint along with me each Friday, that would be fun. I like this bee color. It's very pretty. I don't know if it shows up on the camera as pretty as it does in person. Actually, I don't think any of these colors show up quite as pretty watching the video as they do in person. So that's all of the B for piece number 9. And we did the B for piece number 8. Piece number 10 has some B. Let's pull that over. I figured we'd hang out for about an hour each Friday, right? But then tonight I have free, so we'll do the little Zoom. And maybe I'll get all of the rest of these pieces done. If you're not doing this quilt, I still hope you hang out with us. I think the main reason why we come live each week is just to hang out with everybody, right? Whether you're doing the project or not. I think for the seahorse one, I'm going to pre-record the video for that and do like a time lapse. So you see start to finish of that quilt. I think that's how I'm going to do that one. The main reason for doing this mystery quilt is so we can just chill out for at least an hour, maybe 2 during our weeks, right? With all of the stuff. If you're anything like me, your schedule is packed. So it's nice to be able to just dedicate an hour or 2 in your week of downtime where you're not stressing out over deadlines. You're not stressing out over things you have to buy, things you have to do. This is our de-stress time in our week, right? That's what started this whole mystery quilt, was a project where we could just get away from everything. But then I enjoyed it so much that I designed another one. I don't know if paint by numbers is trending right now, or maybe it's all popping up because I've talked about it and my phone hears me, you know. I don't know. But over on TikTok, all these paint by numbers videos are popping up. So it made me think that maybe it's trending right now. Or maybe that's just happening because I've talked about it. And those videos might be old. I don't know. Yeah, Terry said these videos are like friends getting together. Exactly. One of the things I like about this little angled brush like that is that with the very tip of it, I can go in and do like little pokies and touch-ups with it. And I can do relatively straight lines with this brush. So if you're using a liner brush and you're struggling, maybe try using one of these angled type of brushes and see what that does for you. It also holds quite a bit of paint on it. Although I try not to dunk my whole brush into, and sometimes I'll even get rid of a lot of extra paint out of it. But try this angle brush. Oh yeah, I guess so. I guess they have become pretty popular. Kim, I use a program called Inkscape to do all of my designs. Inkscape has a little bit of a learning curve. But it's just like any other software, right? Every time you try a new software, each one of them has a learning curve. You have to figure out all the functions and what it does. But once you get it, it's a lot of fun to work with. All right, so there's Piece number 6, all the bee is painted in. Piece number 7 has a little bit of bee. We'll paint that. Anitra said her phone is a spy. I think they all are, Anitra. It's kind of weird, right? Kind of weird. I'm just going to tell you, if you haven't started this quilt yet, maybe you have and you're going to totally get what I'm about to say. If you're starting with the A color, right, you do all the blue, the 5 pieces with the blue, and then you switch to this like sea green color and you do all your B pieces. By the time you break out the seed color, you're like, ooh, that's bright, that's so pretty. And then you pull out, what color is it? You pull out that red and the orange. You're like, holy cow, that glows right on the fabric. I love that. I think your eyes get used to seeing the color you're working with. So when you switch colors, you're like, wow, that really pops. Again, I'm trying to keep this paint as thin as possible. Doing a full coverage. I'm a little thin right there. Do you see that? I'll probably leave that. But I'm trying to get a full coverage without leaving globs of paint sitting on top of that fabric, right? I'm a little thin right there. Let's see. Do I need any more B, 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 B? I mixed too much B paint. Practically Creative said D is refreshing. Let me see what D. This one's refreshing when you get to that one. Debbie said, I want to learn Inkscape. Debbie, there are so many videos here on YouTube. Yes. Search TroyTube. He has some awesome Inkscape videos. I have a few here on my channel. I don't go into a lot of teaching about Inkscape because it's not really, I have a hard time sometimes doing videos on it and explaining what I'm trying to do. But I do have some videos. Emily asked, why did she choose color D? Anitra, I let the app pick the trending colors. So the swatch that you see, that actually came from the app. And where D is will make sense once everything comes together. But if you don't like color D, swap it out for one of the other colors or something totally different. I will say D looks really good when the quilt is all together. Oh, Logos by Nick is also a recommended channel for Inkscape. That's good to know. Thank you, Anitra. TroyTube, yes. Just going to dry my brush. We have about 6 minutes. I thought we'd keep these videos to about an hour. So I'm not even going to mix another paint color because I know I probably won't use it all. And I'd rather not have to put this in a bag or wash that down the sink. Do you know what I'm saying? I try not to waste too much like I did last week. So my brush is all clean and I'm going to leave the rest of the pieces to give me something to do during tonight's Zoom. So that's where we are with the pieces for week number 2. I did want to mention too, if you're done with your pieces from last week, right? And you've already removed the freezer paper from the back, and then you've heat set them, you could go ahead and square these up and get them ready if you want. I waited until all 25 of my first pieces were done and then squared them up. And squaring up is not ever something that I love to do. Even when doing patchwork quilts and all the other stuff, squaring up is not something that I just enjoy doing. So squaring up 25 pieces all at one time was a bit of a chore. If you want to do that on a weekly basis, so when you're done with week 5, all your pieces are already squared up and you do them little chunks at a time, it might be a less daunting task. So once your piece is dry and heat set, then you can square them up, and we're squaring them up to this outside line. Here's the thing. Depending on your print settings, yours might have printed at exactly 4.5 by 4.5. If you're using Adobe Reader and you choose actual size, your pieces should measure 4.5 by 4.5. But if you've used your iPad, tablet, or phone to print your pieces off, they might vary slightly smaller or slightly bigger than 4.5. That's okay. As long as all your pieces are exactly the same size, you're just going to square them up to this outside line, right? That's why that's there. So you could go ahead and square up pieces from last week. If you've heat set them, I would heat set them first and then square them up and just set them off to the side. And that's what I'm going to do. Tonight I'll probably square up my pieces from week number 1 and then finish painting my pieces for week number 2. That's my plan. You might want to wait until you have all 25 pieces done, but that wasn't very fun for me. That's just the truth. Terry said, what do you mean heat set? Okay, so depending on your fabric medium, Miss Terry, I'm using the DecoArt Americana fabric painting medium. So on the back, once everything is dry, it says you have to heat set these. Heat set for 30 seconds. I just put 6 pieces in my heat press and heat set them for 30 seconds, 6 at a time. But you can use your iron, and I would use a cotton setting with no steam. I would put a scrap piece of fabric over top of it and then heat set it with your iron. But whatever fabric medium you're using, check the instructions because they're all different on the back. And I'll tell you what it does. I can't pull out my first quilt, but this texture that you feel from the paint, it smooths it out. And it makes it permanent. This is an art quilt, so I don't ever foresee washing this quilt at any time ever. But if you were using paint and to a quilt block that you were going to put into a quilt that might get washed, what the fabric medium does is makes this permanent. It helps it to keep it from cracking over time and washing. It also helps it to not fade, right? And it also makes it smoother and softer. So check your instructions on the back of whatever you're using. Jane said, when you heat pressed, do you put some? Yep. You'll want to cover it. You could use a Teflon sheet, a piece of parchment paper works great, or a scrap piece of fabric. When I go to the thrift stores, I like looking for pillowcases that look relatively new, right? Now I wash them when I get them home, but then I cut them for larger cloth pressing pieces, and I use those. Did you use batting in the final project? I did. I certainly did. Veronica said, I put plastic wrap tightly over my mixed paint and put it in a Ziploc bag. The paint is still good to use this week. Awesome. If I was disciplined, Miss Veronica, that's exactly what I would do too. I'm just not that disciplined. So as we close for today, y'all, I just want to thank y'all so much for hanging out with me. I am going to share a little preview of what I'm working on because it's so much fun. Let me move these out because they're still wet. And I don't want to smear any of that. Y'all can sit over there and dry and wait for tonight. You can sit right there and dry and wait. Okay, so I did this little drawing of a seahorse, right? So I'll show you the drawing first. There's my drawing. Isn't that so cute? I'm going to tell you, I recently got the friction pins for tracing, right? Because they erase. And I wanted to see if I liked it better than my Abadi heat erasing pins. And I do. I like it a lot better. The lines are so much smoother on fabric than these. I like these too, right? But I ordered some friction pins and they came the other day. So I've been testing them out on fabric and they work really well. But they also work really well for drawing on paper. So I drew, well, this is not my first draft. I drew it and then I traced it and refined it. So this was drawn with the friction pins and I really like that. But that's my finished drawing. And then I scanned it, right? And I brought it into Inkscape and I made it bigger. So this actually prints off at 20 inches by 20 inches, 6 different panels. And then I colored it in the Inkscapes, right? So there's my colored version. Isn't that pretty? Look, 23 colors. 23 colors. I don't think you get bored of any color when you have that many colors. Yes. That's so pretty. So these are all the colors I used, which I just noted them. You could absolutely swap out the colors if you wanted to, right? And then I numbered them so you have a guide, right? I did not put the numbers on the actual pieces so you could print them. So then I have a guide of where all the colors, they're all numbered, right? So that's what I've been doing the last couple of days, is numbering all of these pieces so you'd have a guide. Right? And then creating the pieces that print on fabric. So you would just put the freezer paper on the back of your fabric. And this is a legal size piece of paper, right? So that's how big I made my pieces. You would just cut your fabric with the freezer paper on it. What is it, 8.5 by 14? So there's actually 6 pieces. And when you print them off, like that's the piece. So you don't have to trace these pieces if you don't want to, right? I mean, you could if you don't want to print on the fabric. But I printed out a test piece and it was gorgeous. So for this one, I don't have to trace and I don't have to paint the black lines. I can just start painting in all the white spots, right? Right? Isn't that fun? So there's 6 panels to this quilt. And once I print them off, I can just start painting. Right? I wish I would have thought about doing that for the quilt we're currently working on, but I didn't think about it. But for this one, I don't have to trace that seahorse again. It's going to print right on the fabric. Yeah, Nitra said I like all the pebbles. Yes, that's going to be fun to paint, right? Just little tiny circles. I don't know how I'm going to quilt this once it's together. But I can see myself doing some quilting around each one of these pebbles, maybe. We'll see. Yeah, so that's going to be so much fun. So that's what I've been working on. And yeah, that's going to be fun. Yeah, I really do like that friction pin though. I had never used them before, but I really, really do like them. And what was cool was, well, there was all these different packs on Amazon, right? I ordered mine on Amazon, but this came 3 in a pack for $5 and something. But I did see some packs where you got refills to put into your pin. They looked a little bit different than this, I think. But I like the way this feels in my fingers. So, yeah, 3 for $5. That's pretty good, right? Now, I can tell you, if you wanted to do this quilt with fabric instead, you could just cut out a whole bunch of different little confetti pieces, right, to fill in this bottom part instead of meticulously tracing all of those little tiny circles and trying to lay them in just right. But the rest of the pieces are fairly big, so if you wanted to trace them and do them with fabric, I think you could. So yeah, there's my original drawing. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, I just want to thank y'all so much for hanging out with me. I'll put this back on the screen just in case you've joined in after we started and you want to hang out with us tonight. We're doing the paint party Zoom again on Creative Crew. I want to thank all my moderators today. Thank y'all so much. It is so nice to be able to live stream and not have to focus so much on any shenanigans that might happen in the chat. It doesn't happen often. It has happened before. So it's nice to have y'all here just in case something like that were to happen, that you could catch it for me. And I just want to hang around for a minute because I know while I was painting or showing something, I might have missed a question. So if that's the case, if you asked me personally a question early on and I've missed it and you're still here, you have a couple minutes if you want to repeat the question. I don't like to leave thinking that I might have missed somebody's question. Ooh, Diane57 said, don't leave these in your car. The heat erases. Ooh, that's good to know. I watched a lot of reviews on this, right? And people say, well, the lines come back if your project gets cold. So if you're using this to do like an art quilt like I am, we're painting over the lines, so I don't know that it would matter so much. But if you've used this to trace applique or something, and then put your quilt in the attic, the lines might come back. But on the other hand, if you're working on a project and you don't finish the project for a long time and you store it away into a room that gets warm, your lines might erase. But I guess if you put it back in the freezer, the lines would come back. I don't know. Thank y'all so much. Thank y'all for the thumbs up. Y'all notice on YouTube videos here lately that you don't see the count for the thumbs downs? That's interesting. As a YouTube content creator, I kind of like that. I do and I don't like that. I can tell you, sometimes I like to see the feedback on videos. I like to see if people find interest in the videos, and I like to see the counts. I don't solely rely on the dislikes and the likes, right? But I like to see the feedback. But as a content creator, someone who makes videos, it can be really discouraging, especially if you've worked really hard on a video and you're like, oh, I think I did really good with this video. As soon as you post it, you got 5 thumbs downs and you're like, holy cow. So I'm 50-50 on the new change on YouTube. As a content creator, I kind of like it because I don't see that count. But as a watcher, I kind of miss seeing that. I don't know. Practically Creative said, I gave a thumbs down on a video recently and it said your feedback will be shared with the content creator. I'm going to have to look more into the analytics part of it because that change, for me anyway, only happened a few days ago and I've been busy with this. So I'm going to have to look to see if I can still see how many thumbs downs there are. I haven't noticed where to find that, but I'm sure I can see it. So it's been really great hanging out with y'all. I don't see lots of questions coming through. So I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Harlan spent this whole morning pulling out stuff out of the attic for Christmas decorations. Tomorrow he is working. So Sunday we're decorating the tree. That's fun. Anitra, I'm a little bit like you on that, right? That's why I say I'm 50-50. I don't like that they have control over what you see and what you don't see. But as a content creator, it can be disheartening, right? So I'm kind of 50-50 on it. So Sunday we're decorating the tree. Tonight we're hanging out on Creative Crew. Here's the thing about the paint party Zoom. Because I know everybody that is here on YouTube doesn't necessarily do Facebook. If you don't do Facebook, but you really want to join in this Zoom and you have some free time this evening, send me a message on Etsy because I can send you the link over on Etsy and you can join us, right? Anyone with the link can join in the Zoom. You don't have to be on Facebook. Creative Crew is a safe place where I can openly share the link. I would never put the link here on YouTube because who knows who's going to join in, right? So there's a little bit of some safety nets on the link for the Zoom. But if you don't do Facebook and you really want to join in, send me a message on Etsy and I can personally send you the link. Hazel, we did have a good Thanksgiving. All the kids were here. And my brother and his wife and their kids were here. I ate like a fat cat. And then for the next couple of days after. Debbie, I'm with you. I'm a little bit of a Grinch when it comes to decorating. Just honestly, I love the decorations and seeing them out. It's when it's time to put them all up. When it's time to put them all up and you have a million things you're trying to do and then you got to put all this stuff back up. I'm a little bit of a Grinch. So don't listen to me. Crystal said, I use a Stay Wet palette. Found on YouTube how to make one. Search on how to make a Stay Wet palette to keep your paints wet. Ooh, Crystal, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to write that down so I can go check out what you're talking about. How to make a Stay Wet palette. If you watched my video from last week, you know I wasted quite a bit of paint. And today I wasted a little bit. I mean, I could always, do the plastic wrap in the Ziploc bag. I would check out to see what this Stay Wet palette is. Pamela said their dad would never let us decorate until after the 10th of December, which was his birthday. I think in our family it's been pretty traditional to decorate the weekend after Thanksgiving, so we're a few days late. Last year we did not decorate at all because, well, with the shutdowns and everything, nobody was coming, and we were going camping the day after Christmas for like a week and a half. We went to South Carolina. So we did not decorate at all last year. And I would tell you I was a little bummed. I wasn't bummed when I got home from South Carolina because I didn't have all this stuff to put away. But leading up until Christmas, it was a little sad not having at least a tree up or something, right? But then it was nice I didn't have to put anything away. Harlan has pulled about 25 bins out of the attic this morning. He loves to decorate for Christmas. He has to work really hard on me to get me into the mood. But by Sunday when we decorate, I'll be there, right? Hello, Charlie. It's so great to see you. I know, Anitra. Well, 25 bins. That's because when we moved from Hampton here, we not only moved our stuff, but my parents moved in with us. So we have their stuff and our stuff all combined. And we downsized. Me and Harlan, we downsized. I don't think my parents downsized nothing when we moved. But we did a lot of downsizing before we moved, right? But 25 bins, a lot of the bins are my mom's stuff. But we're not using all of the stuff. I can tell you that right now. A lot of those bins are going right back in the attic. Backroads Art Studio said, I live in a camper, so decorating is small, so it makes it easy to put away. Life goals. One day I want to retire and live in our camper. I really do. I love it. If I had a little tree about this big, I'd be okay with that. Debbie said, I easily have 25 bins. I don't know why that does not surprise me, Miss Debbie. I see you going all out with your decorations. Debbie said starting is the hardest part. I think you're right, Debbie. I think maybe if I put some music on, some Christmas music, and maybe make some yummy food and snacks or something. If there's snacks, I'm there 100%. So snacks for Sunday. All right, y'all. I've chit-chatted and held you up enough for your Friday. I hope to see you this evening. If not, we'll miss you. But if you have some free time and you want to hang out with us, it's pretty fun to come in to do the Zooms. If I don't see you, I for sure will see you next Friday where we're doing week number 3. The puzzle pieces will be up the day before on Thursday, so you can grab those and print them out. In last week's video, I said, if you paint your pieces Thursday, try not to share them before the video on Friday. But if you haven't noticed yet, all the pieces are starting to look the same. So I don't know. Like with the seahorse quilt, if that was a mystery, then yeah, you'd be like spoiling the great big effect, right? But pretty much all of the pieces are going to kind of look the same. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I'm going to try to find this little button. There we go. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Share this with your friends, for those creative friends who like this type of art quilts, or maybe they haven't tried art quilts before and you think they might be interested. Completely free pattern. I want you to play along, okay? Bye, everybody.